Hieronymus Bosch's Brutal Orchestra is an absolute gem of a game. It's so good that it's one of the major catalysts that led to me completely forgetting that I have a YouTube channel. If you've never heard of it, no biggie, I'll give you the lowdown real quick. What we have here is a turn-based, roguelike strategy RPG featuring permadeath, a large roster of recruitable party members, and a totally unhinged amount of items, all dressed up in a seriously demented, trippy aesthetic reminiscent of Hieronymus Bosch's works. Basically, it's like if The Binding of Isaac and Lisa the Painful had a baby together. A really messed up baby from some seriously messed up parents. You play as Noak. You are being guided through what is effectively purgatory by a shadowy, masked blob creature named Bosch. The goal is to get revenge on the man who killed you. Along the way, you'll need to enlist some freaky friends in your merry murder band if you want to survive. And really, that's all you need to know. Now that you know what's up, here's the premise for today's video. A major mechanic of this game is color-coded attack resources. These are called Pigment, and I'll go into a full explanation in a moment. Every action you take requires resources. Pigment. It is possible to use mismatched pigment to take actions at a detriment. So, I thought it would be a fun challenge to complete a run without ever using the correct pigment. Wrong pigment only run. Oh, and before I forget, spoiler warning, I have almost everything unlocked in this game. I'll be talking about the final bosses, etc. Brutal Orchestra is $20 on Steam, and it frequently goes on sale, and is absolutely worth picking up. I'd honestly rather you play it yourself than watch this video if somehow I'm your introduction to this 4-year-old title. Plus, you could always toss this video into your watch later or something if you really care that much. I certainly don't. But consider yourself warned, this game is peak, don't spoil yourself. Okay, so, since all of us have definitely played Brutal Orchestra before, I don't have to explain what pigment is and what using the wrong pigment does. But I will anyway. Pigment is like mana, and there are 4 colors of it: yellow, blue, red, and purple. Pigment is gained from directly damaging enemies or a party member being directly damaged. The color of the pigment you gain from this is based on the enemy or companion's health bar color. Every turn you start with 3 yellow pigment in your yellow pigment generator, and whatever pigment is stored in your pigment bar from the previous turn. If you have too much pigment to fit in your bar, your entire party will suffer a percentage of damage at the end of your turn based on the amount of overflow you have. The main character, Noak, uses yellow pigment, so typically he is the least likely character that would ever have to use wrong pigment. Every character has 3 abilities, most of the time, and these abilities cost 1 to 4 pigment of a specific color or colors. Using the wrong color will damage the user for 10% of their health per wrong pigment used. In the worst cases, up to 40% recoil damage. Yikes. The challenge, the rules, and a brief overview. If you still don't get the gist, I'm only allowed to use the wrong pigment for all abilities throughout the run. If a move requires 2 red pigment, I must use 2 non-red pigment and take 20% recoil damage, or not use the ability at all. Every time a party member uses an ability, they will be taking damage. Notably, this makes Noak a much less effective party member as his passive skill grants him a damage bonus from killing enemies that is removed upon taking damage. Noak will never have the focused status and not immediately lose it in this run. This challenge harms the viability of more characters than just Noak though. Let's take a look at the roster. 3 extremely good characters, Hans, Clive, and Pearl, have very limited application in this run, as Hans has the Delicate passive, which doesn't allow any kind of self-healing from abilities used with wrong pigment. Pearl has a large health pool and large pigment cost abilities, so she's constantly taking 30% of her HP to contribute. Clive suffers from both of these issues. Gospel and Aegon's massive health pools make their effectiveness limited to just a couple of battles. Longliver is normally really good as well, but I'm not sure that he could leech enough HP to keep up with the wrong pigment recoil. Most everyone else is similarly disadvantaged due to lack of any kind of real sustain. There are a select few items that could theoretically make almost any party member viable here, but there's a pretty large pool, and this game doesn't have any kind of reroll function like other roguelikes do, so banking on a specific item isn't how I intend to approach this. The most useful thing here will probably be a support-oriented party member considering all the damage we'll be taking. So first off, I'm going to get into the failed runs. And for the first few practice attempts, I was just trying to see what's what and how shitty the constant pigment damage would be, so I started off with some rando runs that went very poorly. It was clear to me that putting my fate completely in the hands of RNG was not the path to victory at all. I needed to choose a champion, and based on the limitations at hand, I was drawn to two characters in particular, Cranes and Rags. Cranes is great at self-sustain and group healing, as well as curse removal, as situational as that is. Rags is a gimmick character that links enemies, gives scarring to increase damage received, and always shares her damage to linked targets. Most importantly, she can out-heal any wrong pigment damage with her super low cost Become Whole Again ability, as well as setting up an opposing enemy for death by inflicting scars and multiple turns of linked. Rags definitely seems like the best choice. She may not be able to heal others, but she can heal herself consistently and overall lower the amount of wrong pigment damage we have to take. Deciding between loadout A, B, and C is mostly straightforward. B absolutely isn't an option, as Rags' Become Whole Again skill is her best resource, so the real question is, what's the better pairing? Loosely Entwined will help us spread damage across multiple enemies more efficiently, but Untapped Connection is better at ramping up single target damage and hitting linked enemies from any position. Kind of a toss-up. I swap between loadouts A and C a few times across my runs. Ideally, we'd have Rags and Cranes, but that's just not how this game works. You'll only get to pick one character. The other is random, or slightly less random. Oh well, maybe we'll get lucky and find Cranes later in the run. If not, Thipe, or... how is that said? Type? Thipe? Thipe or Splig would be adequate, if they have the right loadouts. Now, since your time is valuable, I'll go ahead and synopsize my failed attempts instead of going into each one in great detail. In the first run, I accidentally used correct pigment, ending the run. A valuable learning experience, as when you select an ability, the game will automatically prepare the move with the correct pigment, if it is available. So, I'll have to take the time to manually place the wrong pigment to avoid disqualification in the future runs. For the second run, I was overusing my abilities and ended up taking too much wrong pigment damage, resulting in an eventual party wipe. And for the third run, I made it to the Orpheum this time, but I got really unlucky and ran into a double one-man band, which was just absolutely devastating. There was no way I was going to survive that encounter. In the fourth run, major misplays against Hickories, one of the first bosses. I lost Rags, and it all went downhill from there without my win condition. For number 5, more misplays by me. I picked Cranes this time, which was going well, but the team was just really unprepared to deal with a Revola in the Orpheum, and got flattened. In the 6th run, this one was going really well, but just completely fell apart right before the final boss, which happened to be the Divine. I had a really nice party setup with plenty of support, but lost Splig while fighting the Charcarrion because I didn't account for scars boosting the wrong pigment recoil damage. Then I lost Rags to overflow damage, and had to try and fight the final boss with just Noak and Longliver. Into the trash it goes. For the 7th run, a lot like the last run, I made it all the way to the final boss, which was once again the Divine. Along the way, I made a serious stumble against another one-man band, and wiped half my party. I recovered, but continued to struggle and lose party members in the hellscape that is the garden. Once again, I faced the Divine with an incomplete party, and realized something important. Normally, the Divine is totally the easier of the two final bosses. However, the Divine gives all party members one scar every turn you get a chance to wail on it. Scars, plus wrong pigment, is your run in the trash. At least things went a lot better next time. The immediate difference from this run and the failed ones is that this time I started with a very solid support character in Splig, with a decent loadout too, who could manage to heal other party members and self-sustain like 25% of the time, but that was plenty enough to make the far shore a lot more tolerable. Some of these runs' most annoying moments were in the early game. After the very first fight, I realized that I gotta go make. An appropriate amount of time passes for an adult man within my age range, and I return to the run. Splig keeps Noak healthy and free to use abilities, while Rags boosts damage with scars and spreads damage to other enemies with links. Bronzo blesses our run with nothing. We'll see how that pans out later. At our first shop, we pick up used band-aids and a war bond for free. Both could be pretty useful actually. I also pick up another dud for later. Eventually, I produce enough coins to buy out the Fool's Board, and oh man, wouldn't you know it, it's my boy Cranes. He's not exactly what we're looking for right now though. This Cranes has Nibble My Flesh and Regretful Absolve. He does not have Slowly Waste Away, so his healing isn't really on par with Splig yet. We'll bench him and see if he makes his way into the team later on. Oh, and I also got Anton here. The rest of the Far Shore is pretty par for the course. I equipped the war bond I got from the shop before a fight to get an item instead of coins for a combat reward, and I rolled Stolen Gold, which is a high-risk, high-reward money engine item. I get away with using it in one last fight before the final boss and snag 18 whole coins. Very nice. Our first boss is Mobius. He's probably the least dangerous amongst the bosses of the first stage, the Far Shore. He'll put Oiled and Ruptured on your party members, but so long as he isn't spamming his normal attack that hits all the opposing spaces, he's pretty easy. And he goes down without any issues at all. Stage 2, the Orpheum. This can be a really dangerous stage and quite the jump up from the Far Shore. We get a super early Fool's Board, and since I've got 30 coins, I figure that's our next stop. This is the last Fool's Board that will be available to us, as Stage 3, the Garden, doesn't have one, or a shop for that matter. Bimini, Arnold, and Cleaver are here. Arnold is already kind of a bad party member, but he's truly terrible under the current run conditions. His panic attack passive entirely prevents him from scaling his healing or damage with wrong pigment. Bimini actually has potential, but her loadout is pretty weak. Not only that, but her downsides are pretty severe in this case and will actively harm the rest of the party every time she acts. Cleaver is our boy. He's going to need a lot of healing to get away with all the wrong pigment damage, but he'll be a great contribution to our overall damage per turn. Setting off, I pick up smokestacks for free in the next location. His main thing is reducing overflow, which hasn't been much of a concern during this run, considering that we can just use whatever pigment we want. At least he has toxic fumes, kind of a broken ability for the super low pigment cost. He feels like a better option than Fennec, who I picked up earlier, so he'll be joining our party for the time being. We put him to use immediately against 4 music men by having him be the holder of our stolen gold. Everything was going great until I used toxic fumes without realizing just how many scars smokestacks had built up. The worst part is, I don't even get double combat rewards because the item carrier died in the fight. I learned nothing from what happened with smokestacks and attempted to use the stolen gold on Fennec in the next battle against some ruminating spoggles and a writhing spoggle. And lucky me, the writhing spoggle's super painful self-destruct attack is what it rolls for its first turn action, and my party couldn't kill it in one turn. So Fennec dies just as pointlessly as smokestacks did. Lovely. The next stop is the very last shop of the run. I only buy 2 items here: counterfeit coins, a much safer and easier money generation item, and pep powder to get some easy shields. Should work well with this challenge, considering that every ability used will generate a shield. Heading out, I spot an item chest in the distance and receive what is possibly the best item roll throughout all these runs combined. A gift? Free healing with a pretty serious downside, but the constricted status can be worked around. This will be a massive boon to our party. The question is, who to put it on. Well, Splig has been struggling the entire run to keep their own HP up, so they're the obvious pick for now. I spend a little more time in the Orpheum to prepare for the Charcarrion, our second boss. I heal my party with Splig, kill some music men, more writhing spoggles, jumble guts, singing stones, until my party is all healed up and I've made a decent chunk of change. I also spent some coin to rank Noak up a couple times in the Orpheum to start putting more damage on the field. Since the Divine gave me such a hard time in my failed runs, I made sure to have 20 coins to guarantee myself the Witness, the other final boss. This is probably the one time ever that the Witness will be easier than the Divine. Before that, we'll need to take out the Charcarrion. This guy's probably the most difficult Area 2 boss, so I'm pissing myself a bit over this encounter. Remember when I grabbed the another dud item from the first shop way earlier in this run? That's gonna come in handy here. So I had no idea that Rags is so good in this fight. The first thing I did was apply Link to the Charcarrion, and on his first turn, he hits Rags 3 times, which hits him right back for 24 damage. Anton also finally gets his chance to shine here with Trash Shank to apply Rupture. Since he has multiple turns and moves almost every turn, Rupture is just guaranteed damage. In addition to the scarring applied to the Charcarrion through Rags and Cleaver, he did like 21 damage at rank 1. Pretty impressive stuff. We begin round 2, and this guy's already at half health. When I go to reapply Linked with Rags, the wrong pigment recoil damage sets off our another dud item and hits the Charcarrion for 45 more damage. A bit overkill, he was already getting steamrolled anyway, but oh well. Noak and Cleaver knock out the last 20 hit points, and Anton gets an early hit in on the decomposition phase. At this point, he has so many scars built up that he's completely fucked. He takes 83 damage before going back to his attacking phase, and he doesn't get a chance to act out another turn, and just dies to his own decomposition damage. This might actually be the fastest I've ever taken out Charcarrion. It's definitely the lowest turn count I've ever had against him, so I'm hitting PBs in my silly challenge run. With the death of the Stage 2 boss, we have now entered the final stage, the Garden. This place blows. Very annoying enemies lurk here, lying in wait to sabotage our run. We get extremely lucky and mostly only have to deal with skinning homunculus. They can be difficult when paired with shivering homunculus due to the parental-infantile interaction, but we have an item that prevents that from happening. Skinning homunculus have the formless passive, which is pretty easy to exploit. Simply force the enemy to cycle through their attack intent until you re-roll the least effective move. Ideally, that would be the attack that hits all enemies and allies to the left or right of the homunculus, but positioned in a way that hits as few party members as possible. It only gets chaotic when other enemies are involved, like the choir boy. The homunculus can hit them with some attacks and give them extra turns. Luckily, nothing of that caliber happens this time. After just 2 combat encounters, we already have our final boss portal in the distance. This is normally where I jump into my final preparations since there aren't many reasons to linger about in the garden. However, Bronzo decided not to pay up this run, so we're gonna pay him a little visit. Not to fight him though, my team is actually really fucked up right now, and I need to do some healing. Losing to Bronzo won't cost us anything except our coins, so I spend 25 coins on ranking up our bench warmer Cranes to level 3. This will make his Absolve skill very strong, especially for our final battle. We do some, but not nearly enough healing, and Bronzo bankrupts us immediately as expected. Still came in incredibly clutch though. The secret Bronzo fight is a pretty rare occurrence, so even getting the chance for some safe healing at all at this stage of the game was a serious blessing. And now time for the last obstacle, the Witness, also known as Osmond Sinox. This guy is absolutely nuts. Every turn he has 5 actions similarly to the Charcarrion. He punches the opposing space and moves to the left or the right. These punches have a decently high chance to inflict curse, which is why we brought Cranes along. Osmond's 5th action is always Mortal Horizon, which is a 100% success rate insta-kill attack on the opposing space. On the very first turn, if your team can't do 80 damage, which is pretty unrealistic in most runs in my experience, someone is fucking dead. There's a true beauty to it. Even worse is the possibility of a 50-50, which can devolve into a 50-50, 50-50 depending on how many turns Osmond does it, but he can spend an action randomly moving to the left or the right so that you don't even have total control over who's dying. It's great. Anyway, getting back to the run at hand, I immediately kick it off by applying Linked and a couple scars with Rags and dealing some damage with Cleaver and Noak. Cranes does a big heal at the cost of his own health, and Anton sadly will not only be the turn 1 death, he can't safely use an ability due to his skittish passive, so he doesn't even get a final attack. Sorry Anton, you were actually pretty consistent this run. You deserved better. On the bright side of things, Rags was positioned to get hit by Osmond twice and did 16 damage through Linked. It's turn 2, and Osmond's got 49 hit points left. I immediately spot the dreaded 50-50 right before the Mortal Horizon, and decide that he has to die this turn. Rags is cursed and half health, but Cranes can take care of at least one of those problems, and Rags has got the rest handled. Link reapplied, up to 5 scars now. So Osmond is about to taste the pain. This next part makes me so mad at myself looking back. I was agonizing over making decisions just to majorly misplay by using the wrong move with Cleaver. ultimately resulting in the damage Osmond takes through the link being just 1 point shy of finishing the job. Now Noak gets knocked out with Mortal Horizon, and suddenly the situation is looking somewhat dire. It's turn 3, Cleaver has 3 HP, Rags is cursed with half health again, Crane's got a fat heal from a gift at the start of the turn at least. I move everyone into place and have Cranes remove Rags' curse once more. Cleaver kills Osmond with a slap, and just barely lives from the wrong Pigment recoil. Phase 2 begins, and now there are 2 Osmonds. Lovely. We have an early chance to act with Rags, which we use to apply Linked to Osmond 1. End turn. Turn 4 begins, and I start off by immediately linking Osmond 2 with almost no consideration toward which of my spaces are unsafe. Rags is right in position to get Mortal Horizoned, and she has no movement left, which is really bad. My best option is to trigger Crane's Slippery passive through Eat My Flesh's direct self-damage, and hope he moves right, instead of left. And he does. Cool. I can't believe Eat My Flesh ended up being really useful. We move Cranes to the far right where he won't get punched out, and wow, he really ain't looking too good, is he? Whatever, I'm sure he's fine. I have Cleaver lay the smackdown on Osmond 1, and all that damage hits Osmond 2 as well. God, I love Rags. Unfortunately, Cleaver's a little spent after that with only 1 HP and no movement to escape the punch zone. A valiant sacrifice. Rest in peace, Cleaver. Rags got hit 3 times by the Osmonds during their turn and dealt a lot of damage back as a result. Turn 5, and I'm down to my last 2 party members, so I need to play this as safely as possible. I spend the next 2 turns healing up and skip the next one because it's completely unsafe. It's now turn 8, and I finally get a chance to act safely. I link the lower health Osmond, Rags gets punched a couple times, and Osmond 2 is no more. Rags is cursed, but with Cranes around, this run is pretty much in the bag. I spend a couple turns healing up and link the remaining Osmond. He punches Rags twice, and takes 20 damage for it, but lives with 5 health. Just to be safe, I spend more turns healing and apply the last link. Rags is positioned to take a punch, and as the blow connects, the psychic link inflicts the coup de grace. Osmond Sinox died by his own meaty hands. Poetic. So there you have it. Wrong Pigment only completed. It was kinda close there for a minute, but I knew that Rags would carry me to victory. I had a lot of fun with this, mostly as an excuse to make a video about Brutal Orchestra. It is a really cool game that has remained relatively obscure despite near universal praise. Plus, I haven't really seen anything on it lately, definitely not in current year. Gotta remind folks that this game exists, especially with the devs Talia Bob Mayer and Nick Delgado working on their next game, Clown Meat, which seems cool. Even though I'm not a huge fan of 2D platformers, I will absolutely be buying that game on release, as Brutal Orchestra simply won me over completely. Anything produced by this dev duo is bound to be something special, so I'm keeping my eye out. And finally, I'd like to take a minute to say thanks for watching. I'm happy to be posting again after a long hiatus, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you'll enjoy the next one. It probably won't be another 2 years this time. Probably. Hey, just a quick little add-on here, but as it turns out, one of the 2 Brutal Orchestra devs have not just 1, but 2 little side projects that will be releasing before Clown Meat that you should keep your eye out for. The first one is another content update for Brutal Orchestra. The True Zeal update will be adding 2 new enemies, a new music track, 8 new items, 10 new achievements, and most excitingly, 2 new party members, Formosus the Exhumed and Shelly K the Cougar. As someone who is yet to try out any modded fools, I'm really looking forward to some new characters to mess around with. This update is coming out, quote, very soon, so it's quite possible that it could be out by the time my slow ass posts this video, so keep your eye out. And the other project is from Talia and Autumn West, who is also working on Clown Meat. The game is called Crawling Angels. It was announced back in October 2025 and appears to be a kind of bizarre spin on the genre of physics-based, torture sims, for lack of a better word. The most prominent example being Kick the Buddy, which you might have played once upon a time on your phone. On just a surface level analysis, applying any kind of narrative to that genre of game is a very interesting idea that I don't think has ever been done before. The buddy of Crawling Angels is some kind of sentient, immortal ragdoll chicken that is an attraction at a sketchy carnival. Truly wacky stuff. If you'd like to know more, a link to the trailer and Steam page will be in the description, as well as whatever other relevant links I can think of. Goodbye for real this time. See ya.